I, male 44, recently found out my wife, female 39, who is due in December, has been cheating on me, and now I'm even unsure if they're my kids. I haven't told my wife that I know about her affair, and frankly, I don't want to. I've been with her for so long that I don't know if I can live without her. I don't know how long she and this guy have been meeting up. I hope it's only been a couple of times because that'll be easier to get over. I'm trying to keep myself together for my 14-year-old, but it's hard. Whenever I get a chance by myself, I have a breakdown. I don't get what I did to cause her to do this. I thought I was a good husband, a good father, and a good friend. Turns out I wasn't. I found out about the affair a couple of days ago from my 14-year-old. I've reassured her nothing is wrong, and I'll have me and her mother explain it. I'm thinking about just telling her that me and her mom have an open relationship to keep this under wraps. It will make it not look like she cheated on me. I've just been going through the motions. My wife is still with her parents. She's barely talking to me. Now I know why. Maybe if I tell her I know about her affair, she'll end it and come back home. We have a good life together. We're good together. I feel like I'm rambling. If this was my brother and I found out his wife cheated on him and he was talking like how I am now, I'd grab him by the collar and set him straight. I've watched films of this stuff, heard about it, and even watched shows where the couple talks about how they get past infidelities. I would think they're so stupid, just get divorced. I'd never forgive my wife if she cheated on me. But now I'm in the same shoes and I sound just like them. From what I've seen so far, it was just emotional and nudes, but my daughter had taken plenty of pictures and I've only seen about 4 so far. There are at least 30 photos. I feel that if I go through the rest of these photos, it'll confirm that she may have been having this affair for a long time. My daughters might not even be my kids. If I go public with this, it won't just turn my world upside down, it'll affect my daughters too. I don't want to hurt them like that. I only eat when my daughters are around me to keep up the facade that everything's fine. But when she's away, I'm throwing up and shaking. This isn't just some high school relationship. This is the woman I've built a life with. I know what I should do, but I don't want to. Over the last few days, I've realized how much my life circles around my wife and kids. If I dig any further into this, I just might break. If you've been married, are married, or in a long-term relationship with kids and a home, then how do you get past this? Do I just quietly confront her and do marriage counseling? Or do I just keep this from her and get her to come back home and act as if I know nothing about this? Update. Found out some devastating news recently. I have 5 kids, but there's a chance 3 of them are not biologically mine, possibly all 5 actually. The twins and the one my STB ex-do is pregnant with, still waiting on the results. I know she's still involved with the guy who may possibly be their father, and it's a big possibility that he'll want to be in their lives once this divorce is all over. But I love these girls with all my heart. I've been a dad to them for 5 years. They make me smile every time I hear their voices and see their grins. I know I'm a fool for even thinking this, but I really do care for these girls. Once this goes to family court, will I have any chance of getting 50-50 custody of the girls? Final update. I've confronted my wife. She was remorseful, but she doesn't regret it. Turns out the twins aren't mine, and neither is the newborn. Her parents knew about the affair. They discovered it long before I did. They had been helping them by having my wife, STB ex-do, and her AP meet at their home. Why were her parents helping her instead of being decent people? They didn't want to risk being humiliated. Her parents, basically the entire family, are heavily involved in the church in our town. My 14-year-old and 10-year-old are staying with my brother in SIL. I don't have the strength to be able to take care of them right now. They hate their mother and refuse to speak to her. They're both in therapy. I am too. I tried to take the twins so they could be with their sisters, but my wife put up plenty of resistance. She was begging me. I'm positive AP is with her at the moment. I saw his car heading toward my in-laws' house as I left. AP was also married. I've been in contact with his wife, and she says she's filing for divorce. I haven't asked her if AP has tried to work things out, and frankly I don't care. I always thought my in-laws were stuck up anyways. I'm glad they're all being ostracized. I informed AP's wife about the affair, and she will be filing for divorce. I also informed the church that my wife's family went to on what happened. Nil and FIL have been kicked out of the church, and from the looks of the church's social media page, they deleted anything related to them. I'm glad they're being humiliated. The one thing they fear the most is happening. Neil called me crying, wanting me to clear the situation up. What is there to clear up? FIL wanted me to work things out, but I simply asked if it was him in this situation, would he be working things out? He answered with silence before hanging up. My wife has been trying to reach out to me, but I refuse to answer her. I get just a tiny bit happy seeing how frantic she is to contact me. I don't know what she wants, and I don't want to speak to her anytime soon. I know I'll eventually have to. Before I got the results, I was ready to take her to court and get custody of the twins. As for my wife, everyone around town knows what happened. All my coworkers know, and even when I go to the grocery store, people confront me and give me their condolences. I was told that after I informed the church, a lot of members from there went to spread the word around town. I'm honestly just glad that the word is out there to everyone that my wife is a cheater who got pregnant by her AP 3 different times. Sometimes I do get sad whenever I think about what happened, but I try my best to continue to look at the bright side of things. She and her AP have destroyed their lives and reputation. They didn't want to separate the kids from the biological father who was passing them off on you. It sounds like your wife, her family, and the AP did their homework on paternity laws. He planned a pregnancy with your wife, but he didn't want the legal or financial responsibility. All states in the union assign paternity to the husband regardless of biology. I find it hard to believe that she actually feels any remorse. She would be the only cheat in the universe who ever did. She was planning pregnancies with a little male who she knew could never possibly do the whole parenting role. She used you for that. Depending on the state you're in, you might be able to force legal paternity of the newborn onto the little male AP. Some states give you up to 2 years to dispute paternity. You will likely be stuck paying child support for his twins if you don't fight it out in court against him though. There is some hope that you can sue him for all of it, so don't think it's hopeless. Some states do allow victims of paternity fraud to sue the biological father for current expenses, and even for prior expenses starting on the day of birth. Definitely be looking into that. Paternity fraud, if shown to be known and intentional, can also be charged as a felony in some places, but prosecutions are rare. I know it can be hard to deal with what you're going through right now, but the psychopaths who tried to ruin your life have severely ruined theirs in the process. Go full-on merciless with the child support issue because those two, along with your in-laws, were plotting on sticking you with the bill for a long time now. There are in fact several organizations bringing attention to paternity fraud and providing support for victims. I'll be happy to look them up and post them. Definitely reach out to them. Best of luck to you, OP. Now let's get into today's second story. My wife and I have a 5-year-old boy. My son is my favorite person in the world. We've been married for 8 years but have known each other for 25 years, dating for 3 years prior to marriage. I know the baby isn't mine. We have not had sex in a while. She would make up an excuse or push me away for whatever reason she had at the time, and many of those reasons were believable. I had my suspicions for a while. She slept with a good friend of ours, who as of a few weeks ago is no longer our friend. I never did get a good answer as to why until 2 days ago. She doesn't work and is a stay-at-home mom. I work a lot and pay all of the bills. We own our home outright. 2 nights ago she dropped this bombshell on me when I got home from work. She was crying and calling herself a bad person, etc. Then she said she was sorry for hurting my feelings as opposed to sorry I cheated. She said she has not told anyone, not even our friend, the father, only her sister. We made an agreement that she would terminate the pregnancy and go to counseling. I was awash with emotions I have never felt before, but I thought to myself, maybe this could be a new beginning for us. To preface the next paragraph, I've always wanted a second child. According to her, her doctor told her she could not have any more kids. I was not at that appointment and trusted what my wife told me. I had no reason to not trust her at this point. This was 2 years ago. I know now that this was BS. I've also been tested and I was fertile. Last night she came to me with a knife and asked me to kill our son because that is what I was asking her to do. She then tried to blame me for her infidelity, which I know is BS. She then started calling her pregnancy a miracle. This was an entire world of crazy for her that I have never seen before. Maybe I was just naive. She wants to keep the baby now and I told her I want a divorce. I am very uncomfortable with the thought. I won't be able to read bedtime stories to my son every night now and do the things we do every day together. And I'm not comfortable with my wife meeting someone new, and my son calling him daddy. Because we are in California, I know I am screwed when it comes to divorce and child custody, and that isn't helping things. I cannot afford a lawyer, let alone a good one. I have done nothing wrong here. I've been telling myself that since D-Day. I get to go home and deal with this mess in a few hours. I don't want to see her or talk to her. I just want to see my son. I'm sorry if this seems all jumbled up, but I can't really think straight right now. Thank you for reading. Opie, your wife is demented. She is determined to mess with your head and heart and guilt trip you. Soon she will start telling people you were abusive and had to escape you. Start telling everyone you know the truth. Get ahead of this game before she muddies your name and destroys your reputation, and then lawyer up. You need a recorder to record all your conversations with your wife. A false accusation might be her next step. You say she slept with a good friend. The way you wrote it, I got the impression that you think it was only once. My experience is that the chances of this being a one-time thing are close to zero. It's most likely an affair of some length. Unless you have proof otherwise, like their text saying it was only once, I think you're better off assuming it was some weeks, months of an affair. Get away from this crazy woman as quickly as possible. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened. My name is Mark. I hope you all are having a fantastic day or evening. In today's story, OP found out his wife cheated on him with a felon and then got pregnant. He kicked his cheating wife out, but then she showed up at his house unexpectedly crying for mercy after what happened with her AP. Now let's get into today's story. I caught my wife in an affair 2 months ago. We hadn't been together for 9 years, married for 5. I'm 28 now, so we met rather young and did a lot of learning and growing together. She always had guy friends that she would talk to, so when she mentioned that she was catching up with someone from her past, I didn't think too much of it. Honestly, I should have taken that as a red flag throughout the years, but me being a chill guy and not the jealous type, I didn't make a big deal out of it. We had been struggling in our marriage for the past 2 years. I've made a lot of mistakes, not cheating. Just many moments where I could have been a better partner. She also has made a lot of mistakes in that sense. Yet I had been trying to save the marriage, constantly trying to do things to fix our problems and always asking her if she wanted to talk with that goal in mind. She didn't want to try. She asked for a divorce and kept telling me our relationship was over. I asked her what her plan was. She said she would start making plans and let me know, which she never did. She was comfortable with me supporting her and trying to help her with her mental health problems. She's bipolar and has depression. For the last 2 years, it's been a big part of her life. In December 2020, her dad and I had to take her to a behavioral hospital for the whole month because she became manic. Once she got out, she was on medication and it was obvious she wasn't the same person that she was before. I figured her wanting to split was due to her mental health, so it became another reason I took it easy on her, with her talking to all sorts of people and going places without me and hanging out with people I didn't know. I loved her and didn't want to stress her out or make the situation worse by getting onto her all the time. Just led to arguments. She would tell me she needed to live her life that way for her happiness. We have a 5-year-old daughter. She loves her daughter, but she wasn't focused on being a mother and wife. I was the one pushing for our family to stay together and find happiness in that sense. About 2 months ago, she didn't come home at night. She had been doing that for some time and would tell me she was spending the night at a friend's house. That's when I started to get really suspicious. She walked in the next morning and I asked if there was something that I need to know. She said no and went to bed. For the first time in 2 years, she left her phone open and I told myself it was now or never. I took the phone and walked out of the house and started going through it. I found the guy's number, called him, no answer. Then I saw the messages, proof that they had been intimate. I was shattered, but I kept my composure, went back into the house and confronted her. She was like a deer in headlights. I kicked her out that very moment. Now she's pregnant with the guy. I'm positive it's not mine. We were last intimate in February and apparently they first hooked up in March. Now my goal is to try to gain custody of my daughter and divorce her. The guy is a felon. I don't know what kind of lifestyle they plan on living, but I definitely don't want my daughter around people that make those types of decisions. I'm motivated by making sure my daughter is in a good place and to make sure that she knows that she has one parent at least trying their very best for her future. I struggle every day still, but I have a good support group. My family, my friends, even her dad and some of her family say they are on my side. Everyone sees that what she did was completely selfish. It doesn't make a good image for her or the family in any way. I think a lot about things that I could have done better, but I realize it wasn't my fault. I tried my best to save my marriage. It was her decision. The week that I caught her, I found this subreddit. It's helped me tremendously, and I felt like it was time for me to share my story. It motivated me to hit the gym, as well as concentrate on productive activities to distract myself from all the overthinking, and to better myself for my future and my daughter's future. Thank you all for your time. Update. This past April, I found out my wife was having an affair. We had been married for 5 years and together for 9. When I found the evidence on her phone, I promptly kicked her out of the house that very day. That same week, she ended up getting pregnant by the affair partner who was a felon. We have a 5-year-old girl together. My STBX diva was putting my kid around him. He has a 10-month-old, so she was using the excuse of having my kid with them so the baby could have a playmate. I told her that if she wanted to have time with her kid, then it needed to be just her and my daughter, not them. Well, neither of them wanted to listen to me. I filed for divorce and filed an injunction against her that said she cannot put my daughter around him. If she did, then she would be committing a crime. Seemed to have worked. It also seemed to have caused a rift between them. Enough to where she asked her dad if she could move in with him, so she had nowhere else to go where she felt safe. Other than that, I don't know many more details. I don't talk to her much, only if it involves talking about my kid, and even then I try to keep it short. Her parents and I are on good terms. They understand that it was their daughter's fault and respect that I'm the one that needs to be in charge of my daughter's life. I filed for full custody. My lawyer went ahead and threw in child support. My STBX diva got herself a lawyer, and they offered to settle this in mediation. The first proposed date would have been in December. I thought about it and decided to postpone it till after the holidays since all of our birthdays are around this season as well. Her due date is in January, and the next proposed date for mediation is in April. So that would mean if everything gets settled in mediation, it would be a full year since this all started. If she doesn't agree to my terms in mediation, then we go to court and it'll get ugly. I'm fighting for what's best for my daughter. A person like my STBX diva can't be trusted and responsible with my kid based on her decisions as of late. This doesn't mean that I want to keep my daughter away. I'm willing to let her see our kid on a weekly basis, but the authority and decision-making for my child need to be up to me now. This is all so difficult. I have to make one of the people that I loved most in this world my enemy now. I'm full of anger, deep sadness, a degree of jealousy for someone having been with the woman I loved, and a level of confusion. Confusion in regard to how everything changed so quickly and if what I'm doing is 100% right. About a month ago, she showed up at the house unannounced. She asked if we could talk, so I stepped outside and talked to her in the carport. She asked me for forgiveness, crying to me how she regretted everything, saying that she regretted deciding to keep the baby, telling me she missed everything about us and the family we had in our home. It hurt to hear it because deep down I miss all that too. I told her that it was not that simple, just showing up and speaking those words. I said that I couldn't forgive her just based on that, and that the only way I would consider forgiving her would be for her to show it through her actions, and that I couldn't tell her what those actions should be. It needed to come from her heart, her mind. Yet, my forgiving her wouldn't mean I was giving her a chance to reconcile or even a chance for us to be friends, which is what she asked for. My forgiveness would only be that. Forgiveness. She chose to betray everything she had with us to be with this other person. She can't just backpedal. I told her that she was not allowed in my life, and I didn't want to be a part of hers. The most we could ever do is be co-parents. That's the price she paid for her decisions, among other things that will still unfold. I have to be this way because I gave everything I could to try to save the marriage. We were having issues, but I never cheated. I made other mistakes, but I worked to try to make things better for all of us. However, she's the one that made the biggest mistake, and doing so fully aware of how wrong it was. It's not fair to me to allow her back in my life. It's not fair to my child to confuse her in that way. I'm going to push forward and make a better life for my kid and me. I will be successful in my ventures, and that is the best revenge that I can get. I guess the main reason I wanted to rant is that the holidays and our birthdays are coming up. It'll be the first time in 8 years that we will have to spend the holidays and birthdays in this way. It hurts even more so because I told myself I wouldn't acknowledge those days to her. I don't feel like texting her Happy Thanksgiving or Happy Birthday or Merry Christmas, and honestly I hope she doesn't text me either. On those holidays and on my birthday, I don't know if that's cold on my part or rightfully justified, but that's how I feel. The only time I will be willing to work with her is our kid's birthday, which is also coming up. That way my kid can have both her parents on her special day. Even then, I'll most likely ask her dad to be the middleman in certain things. Well, that's mostly what I wanted to get out for now. Maybe after the holidays, I'll rant again to prepare myself mentally for the mediation. I want to thank this subreddit once again though. On my most difficult days, I come here and find advice and motivation through other people's stories. Maybe one day my completed story of surviving infidelity will help someone else. I wish everyone a good holiday season. Let's be around those people that do love us. Let us enjoy that holiday magic, even during these turbulent times. Take care and keep strong. Wow, OP. You are doing everything right, even though it hurts so much. You could never reconcile and see that affair, baby. It will be a constant reminder of her actions. Stay strong, hug your daughter extra hard during holidays, and focus on the best future for her. Your ex put herself in this position and encased it in concrete. Because she is going to have a child with the AP, you will absolutely need permanent protection for your daughter since he's a felon. You need time to get her healthy enough to be around her child alone. That's the greatest action she can show, that she set boundaries with the AP, and will need to figure out a schedule that avoids him interacting with your kid, as difficult as it may be. Protect your child at all costs. Yes, your daughter needs a mother, but a healthy mother. Now let's get into today's second story. My wife's behavior over the last 8 weeks made me believe she was being unfaithful. I was proved right this week whilst on holiday when I found a text message from her work colleague that was sexually explicit. I confronted her and she admitted everything. It was essentially a kiss at a work party, breakfast at work regularly, and flirting by text message until he asked her to go for dinner and conveniently had a hotel room booked where they had sex. She continued to reply to his sexual messages as recently as the day I caught her. For context, I haven't been the best husband. Whilst I haven't cheated, I have neglected her sexually for a long time by focusing on my career and our lifestyle. She said I wasn't giving her what she needed to be fulfilled, and after resisting her colleague's advances for months, she went with it when feeling low. I understand this and accept my part. I don't accept the betrayal. I'm comforted that she told me everything. It wasn't a complete admission straight away, but after a 5-hour conversation I got it all. She said she still wanted to be with me, but there are so many red flags. She said she would call it off and wanted to do it with him in person. She doesn't want his wife to find out or ruin his life. She still wants to attend a work party knowing he will go. She described the last 2 months as a summer affair that would fade out as they had ground rules not to let it affect work or personal lives. I'm angry on day 2 since confession day. We have a 6-year-old boy and a truly amazing wider family group. Her actions are totally out of character, so we are all completely shocked she did this. I'm angry the man she cheated on me with goes home to his wife and family unscathed, and my world has fallen apart. I've just turned 40 and need to make some serious decisions about how to move forward. Essentially cut and run or repair and try to make it work. I'm not 100% convinced what my wife wants. She's not street smart and she's a little naive. I imagine she just wanted to feel wanted so desperately that she made the ultimate choice to be unfaithful. Help and sorry to all you other people experiencing the same sucks so bad. Hey OP, first of all sorry you are in this mess. Okay, the first mistake is that she does not get to call the shots. So whatever she wants moving forward is irrelevant. Meaning the 3 points you mentioned is not something she can demand. As you describe her current behavior, then it looks like she was totally not remorseful about the affair. She is only remorseful about being caught. Right now what she is doing is damage control. All that happens next is not in her hand and not in her control. You are in control and you must take control. You got one thing right already. You may not have been the best husband, but that is not a reason to cheat. There is never a reason to cheat. She could have sat you down and told you about her feelings and that this was not working for her. Or she could have filed for divorce first and pursued another man after the divorce. There is really no reason to cheat. You need to take time in order to think about what you want, reconciliation or divorce. She must know that cheating has consequences. One of them being exposed. Exposed to her family, exposed to your family, exposed to friends. So you will need to tell everyone what has happened, and the reason you need to is that if she does it, then you will be the bad guy. Find the wife of the AP and tell her. She has a right to know she has been cheated on. It looks like your wife is more concerned about the well-being of her AP than about you. She does not want to ruin his life but is perfectly fine ruining yours by cheating on you. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also comment below with your thoughts on today's stories. If there is a story you would like to share with me, please do not hesitate to contact me. I remember it like it was yesterday, the day my world turned upside down. I'd just gotten home, the house was quiet, too quiet. There it was, her phone, buzzing with a message that wasn't meant for my eyes. But I saw it clear as day. Miss you already, can't wait to see you again. My heart sank, I knew that message wasn't for me. I waited, pacing around the living room like a caged animal until she walked through the door. She was all smiles until she saw the look on my face. What's wrong? She asked, but she knew. She could see it in my eyes, the betrayal I felt. I held up her phone, the message still glowing on the screen. Care to explain this? I could barely keep my voice steady. The color drained from her face. She stammered, tried to grab the phone, but I was faster. It's not what you think, she whispered. But we both knew that was a lie. Then came the tears, the sobbing confessions of an affair. Felt like a bad dream. And just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, she dropped another bombshell. I'm pregnant, she said, her voice barely a whisper. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. My mind raced. The life we'd built together, the trust, it was all shattered in an instant. She tried calling him her lover, but he was gone, vanished into thin air. No answers, just a cold, empty line. It dawned on me that he'd left her to deal with the mess they'd made. I was furious, not just at her but at him, at the whole damn situation. As I looked at her, crying and broken, a dark thought crept into my mind. Revenge. It was a poisonous thought, but it took root. I knew what I had to do. It was crazy, but in that moment it made perfect sense. I was going to get back at her in the most unimaginable way possible. My decision was clear, my resolve firm. I was going to turn our already chaotic world upside down. And that's exactly what I set out to do. So there I was, at this painfully dull family gathering, trying to act normal while my mind was a hurricane of revenge and hurt. And then she walked in, my wife's sister, Laura. I never really paid much attention to her before, but that day she seemed different. Maybe it was the way she laughed or the way the light hit her hair, but something about her caught my eye. We started talking, just casual chit-chat at first. But as the evening wore on, I found myself flirting, something I hadn't done in years. And the crazy thing? She was flirting back. It was like we were in our own little world, and for a moment I forgot about my wife's betrayal. We agreed to meet up a few days later, just the two of us. I told myself it was just for a drink, just to talk. But deep down I knew it was more than that. We met at this quiet little bar on the outskirts of town. It felt secretive, like we were both actors in some sort of drama. As we sat there sipping our drinks, Laura leaned in close. I've always liked you, you know, she whispered. Her words sent a jolt through me. It was madness, but in that instant I wanted her. I drove home that night with my mind racing. My wife, oblivious to it all, asked how the night went. Fine, I muttered, avoiding her gaze. I could tell she knew something was up, but she couldn't quite put her finger on it. The next few days were a blur. I kept meeting Laura, each encounter more intense than the last. And then one night, as we lay together in the dim glow of a cheap motel room, I made up my mind. I was going to do it. I was going to get Laura pregnant. It was the perfect revenge. My wife had betrayed me, and now I would betray her in the worst possible way. With her own sister. The plan was twisted, but it made perfect sense in my head. Laura was all for it, caught up in the heat of the moment. As I lay there in the dark, listening to Laura's steady breathing, I couldn't help but wonder what I had become. I was no longer the man I once was, the man my wife had married. I was something else, something darker. But there was no turning back now. The plan was in motion, and I was going to see it through no matter the cost. I never thought I'd be the guy sneaking around, but here I am, meeting Laura in secret, every chance we get. It's like we're hooked on this thrill of the forbidden, and I can't seem to stop. She's everything my wife isn't right now, passionate, eager, alive with desire. And me? I'm just a guy lost in the middle of an affair I never planned. Meanwhile, back at home, it's like living with a ghost. My wife, she's there but not really. She moves through the days, quiet, withdrawn. I can tell she feels it, the growing chasm between us, but she doesn't know the half of it. Sometimes I catch her looking at me, her eyes searching for something, maybe the man she married. But he's long gone. Then out of nowhere he shows up. The lover. Mr. Perfect who blew up my life and then skipped town. He's on our doorstep looking haggard, desperate. My wife, she goes from sad to furious in a heartbeat. She's yelling, demanding answers, and I'm just standing there, watching it all unfold. He's babbling some nonsense about being in trouble, needing help. I don't buy it. Sounds like a con man's sob story. But my wife, she's listening, and I can see something in her eyes, a flicker of the old her. She's always had a soft spot for lost causes. I can't help but wonder what his game is. Why come back now? And then it hits me. He's scared. He's not here for her. He's here because he's got nowhere else to go. It makes me sick, seeing him weasel his way back into her life, playing the victim. The whole scene's a mess. My wife torn between anger and this misguided need to fix things. The lover, spilling his guts about some trouble he's gotten himself into. And me, the husband, standing in the shadows wondering how the hell my life got so twisted. I keep seeing Laura, our affair, becoming more reckless by the day. It's like we're both trying to outrun reality, get lost in this fantasy where we don't have to face the consequences of our actions. But reality has a way of catching up, and I'm starting to feel the weight of it all pressing down on me. The lover's still around, sticking to my wife like a bad smell. She's trying to help him fix whatever mess he's in. Part of me wants to laugh at the absurdity of it all. The other part, the part that used to love her, it's breaking bit by bit. I lie in bed at night, next to a woman who's become a stranger, and I wonder where it all went wrong. Was it the moment I decided to take revenge? Or was it earlier, when I stopped seeing her for who she was and started seeing only her betrayal? The affair, the lover's return, my wife's loneliness, it's all spinning out of control. And I'm right in the center of it, trying to hold on to something, anything that makes sense. But the truth is, nothing makes sense anymore. Not the affair, not my marriage, not this life I've somehow created. It's like I'm walking a tightrope, and any moment now I'm going to fall. And the crazy part? I'm not sure I even care anymore. Just when I thought things couldn't get more twisted, life threw a curveball that knocked the wind out of me. The lover, the guy my wife was sneaking around with, turns out he's my long-lost brother. Yeah, you heard that right. My brother. The shock of it hit me like a freight train. How? Why? Questions swirled in my head, making it hard to think straight. The whole family was in turmoil. My parents, who'd always lamented my brother's disappearance, were suddenly faced with his return, but not in any way they'd imagined. And me? I felt like I was living in some messed up soap opera. The guy the first hated, the one who'd wrecked my marriage, was my own flesh and blood. My wife, she was a mess of emotions. Guilt, confusion, regret. It was written all over her face. She kept saying she didn't know, that if she had, she would have never. But words felt empty, like echoes in a hollow room. Then, as if things couldn't get any more complicated, Laura dropped her bombshell. She was pregnant. With my child. The silence that followed her announcement was deafening. It was like everyone was holding their breath, waiting for the world to implode. The pregnancy news was like gasoline on a fire. Tensions that had been simmering beneath the surface boiled over. We all sat down for a family dinner, a pathetic attempt at normalcy, but it didn't take long for things to unravel. The dinner table became a battlefield. Accusations flew, old wounds reopened. My wife, looking more lost than ever, tried to speak, but words failed her. Laura, defiant yet scared, clutched at her belly as if to protect her unborn child from the chaos around her. My parents, caught in the middle of this family catastrophe, looked on with a disbelief. And there across from me sat my brother, the man I should have grown up with, shared life's ups and downs with. Instead, he was just a stranger, wearing a familiar face. The tension escalated until voices were raised, and harsh truths spilled out. It was ugly. All the pent-up anger and hurt pouring out in a torrent of bitter words. I wanted to scream, to tell them all to stop, that this wasn't what a family should be. But the words stuck in my throat. In that moment, I saw the destruction I'd caused. My revenge, my affair with Laura, it wasn't just about me and my wife anymore. It had spiraled out, touching everyone I cared about. The realization was a slap in the face. I'd been so caught up in my own pain, my own desire for revenge, that I'd failed to see the bigger picture. As the evening wore on, the arguments faded into exhausted silence. We were a family in ruins, each of us lost in our own tangled web of emotions. I looked around at the broken faces of my family and wondered how we'd ever put the pieces back together. That night I lay awake, the weight of my choices pressing down on me. The mess I'd made seemed insurmountable. And the worst part? I knew there was no easy way out. No quick fixes. We were all trapped in this nightmare. And I couldn't help but feel it was all my fault. Life's funny, you know? One minute you're set on a path, sure of everything, and the next it's like you're in a free fall. That's how I felt when I finally told my wife it was over. I couldn't keep living this lie. Not with Laura carrying my child and everything else in shambles. My wife, she didn't take it lying down. She started doing everything she could think of to win me back. Cooked my favorite meals, wore the dress I used to like, tried to talk about the good times. It was heartbreaking, really. But my heart wasn't in it anymore. Every time I looked at her, all I could see were the lies and the betrayal. Then there's my brother, if I can even call him that. He came to me, hat in hand, looking for some brotherly bond or understanding. He told me about our rough childhood, the things he went through after he disappeared. It was a sob story, all right, but I couldn't find it in me to feel sorry for him. He ruined my marriage, and that's not something I can easily forget. The weirdest part of this whole mess? My wife and him, they started getting close. Not in a romantic way, but like two people who've been through the same storm. They'd sit and talk for hours, sharing stories, finding comfort in their mutual pain. It was a bizarre alliance, watching the two people who hurt me the most find solace in each other. Meanwhile, Laura was in her own little world of joy. The pregnancy suited her, brought a glow to her face. We'd meet up, talk about names, about how we'd raise our kid. It was a slice of normal in an otherwise upside-down world. But even those moments were tinged with guilt. Every smile, every plan for the future. I couldn't shake off the feeling that it was built on a foundation of hurt and betrayal. I tried to focus on Laura, on the baby, but it was like walking through a fog of regret. My wife's desperate attempts to win me back, my brother's pleas for understanding. Laura's happiness, it was a tangled web, and I was stuck right in the middle. It's strange, you know, how life takes these turns. How decisions you make, thinking they're for the best, end up turning your world on its head. I thought I wanted revenge, thought it would make me feel better. But all it did was create more pain, more complications. At night I'd lie awake, wondering how it all got so messed up. My wife, alone in our bed, trying to piece together a broken marriage. My brother, trying to atone for a lifetime of mistakes. Laura, carrying my child, oblivious to the chaos she'd helped create. And me? I was just a guy caught in the eye of a storm I'd helped conjure, trying to figure out how to move forward when every step felt like I was sinking deeper into quicksand. Life's funny like that, always throwing curveballs when you least expect them. And there I was, trying to catch them with my hands tied behind my back. In the thick of all this madness, I guess I wanted clarity, or maybe I just wanted to feel in control again. So I told my wife straight up, this is it. You decide now. It's him or me. I expected tears, a breakdown maybe. But she just stood there, pale like I'd knocked the wind out of her. The next few days she was like a ghost, trying to stitch together what was left of us. I saw it in her eyes, the desperation. She was scrambling for ways to fix things, but deep down I think we both knew it was too late. The damage was done. Then things took a darker turn. My so-called brother, his past finally caught up with him. Some guys he'd messed with showed up looking for payback. I heard the commotion from the other room, shouts, the sound of a scuffle. By the time I got there, it was chaos. That night, as if our lives needed more drama, someone broke into our house. It was like some bad movie, but it was real. Too real. The intruder, probably one of my brother's enemies, was searching for something, tearing the place apart. My wife, she tried to stop him, playing the hero, but it went south real fast. There was a struggle and she got hurt. I heard her scream, a sound that'll haunt me for the rest of my days. I rushed in, managed to scare the guy off, but the damage was done. She was lying there, hurt and scared, and for a moment all our problems seemed so small. I forgot about the affair, the betrayal, everything. All I could see was her, the woman I once promised to protect, now injured because of this twisted web we'd all woven. The ambulance came, the police too. Questions were asked, but I hardly remember what was said. My mind was stuck on her, on the look of fear in her eyes when that intruder grabbed her. Sitting in the hospital waiting for news, I felt a wave of regret. This mess, it wasn't just about me and my bruised ego anymore. It had spiraled into something dangerous, something that could have cost us much more than our marriage. I couldn't help but think about how it all started. A simple affair that blew up into this nightmare. And there I was, in the middle of it, wondering how a quest for revenge led to my wife lying in a hospital bed. The doctor said she'd be okay, just some cuts and bruises, but I knew the scars would run deeper than that. We'd both be scarred, in ways that wouldn't just heal with time. That night, sitting by her hospital bed watching her sleep, I realized how far I'd strayed from the man I used to be. The man she married. I was lost in this maze of anger and revenge, and I dragged everyone I cared about down with me. It was a wake-up call, loud and clear. But the question that kept gnawing at me was, is it too late? Too late to fix things, too late to go back to who we were. I guess some questions don't have easy answers. But one thing was certain, this was a turning point one way or another. The hospital corridors echoed with the sound of my footsteps as I paced back and forth, a mix of anxiety and anger churning inside me. My wife, lying in that sterile hospital room, was a vivid reminder of how far we'd all strayed from the path. In the midst of this chaos, secrets began to unravel, like threads pulled from a delicate fabric. The lover, my long-lost brother, finally confessed. It wasn't just infidelity. He admitted to crimes from his past, things that made my blood run cold. He talked about debts, about running from people who weren't keen on letting things slide. He wasn't just a cheater, he was a criminal. Hearing his confession, something inside me snapped. I confronted him right there in the hospital, not caring who heard. "How could you?" I shouted, my voice echoing off the walls. "You come back into our lives and you bring this chaos with you." His eyes, full of regret, didn't calm the storm inside me. I was beyond furious. I wanted to shake him, to make him understand the pain he'd caused. Meanwhile, Laura, my sister-in-law, was having her own crisis. The pregnancy, the affair, it was all crashing down on her. She confided in me, her voice trembling. "I don't know if I did the right thing." I could see the doubt in her eyes, the fear. What had started as a reckless affair was now a reality she wasn't sure she could handle. And then there was my wife. After the doctors tended to her, she had a moment of clarity. She looked at me, her eyes filled with a sad understanding. "I played a part in this," she whispered. "I pushed you away, I ignored what we had." Her admission was a gut punch. Despite everything, a part of me still cared for her, still remembered the good times before all this mess. The hospital drama, the confessions, the doubts, it was like watching the final pieces of our life together crumble away. I sat there in a hard plastic chair, staring at the white hospital walls, and it all hit me. The affair, the revenge, the anger, it hadn't solved anything. It only served to tear apart what was left of us. In the silence of that hospital room, with the beeping of machines and the distant sound of nurses' footsteps, I felt a profound sense of loss. Loss of my marriage, loss of what could have been with Laura, loss of the family I once had. The revelations, the confrontations, they didn't bring any relief. Instead, they left a bitter taste, a realization of how much damage we'd all done to each other. Sitting there in the dim light of the hospital, I wondered if there was any way back from this, or if we were all too far gone. The web of lies, the hurt, the betrayal, it was all laid bare, leaving us exposed and vulnerable in the face of our own brokenness. The hospital waiting room turned into a battleground that day. Words were thrown like grenades, each one exploding with years of pent-up frustration and pain. It was all out in the open now, the affair, the lies, the betrayal. My wife, her eyes red from crying, her voice hoarse from yelling, was a portrait of despair. Then the cops showed up. My brother, the lover, the cause of all this mess, they cuffed him right there. Turns out, those crimes he confessed to were more serious than any of us thought. Watching him being led away, I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. Relief that his poisonous influence was gone. Sadness for the brother I never really knew. Laura, my sister-in-law, the other woman in this twisted tale, she had her own bombshell to drop. She was leaving town, she said. The baby, our baby, it was all too much for her. She couldn't bear the weight of the scandal, the looks, the whispers. I couldn't blame her. but it felt like another piece of my world slipping away. Then there was me, standing amidst the wreckage of my own making. The anger and the need for revenge that had driven me, it seemed so pointless now. I looked at my wife, really looked at her, and for the first time I saw the damage I'd done. I'd pushed her into another man's arms, driven her sister away, ruined what little family I had left. I wanted to say something, to apologize, to try and fix things. But what could I say? Sorry I slept with your sister? Sorry I broke our vows? It all sounded so hollow. I felt the weight of my choices, heavy on my shoulders, a burden I'd carry for the rest of my life. My wife, once the center of my world, now a stranger, she sat there all alone. Everyone had left her, me, her lover, her sister. She was the eye of this storm, calm, yet surrounded by destruction. I wanted to reach out, to offer some kind of comfort, but I knew it was too late. I'd crossed a line and there was no going back. That day, in the sterile cold of the hospital, I realized the true cost of my actions. It wasn't just a marriage that was broken, it was lives, it was trust, it was the future. I walked out of that hospital a different man. A man full of remorse, unsure of where to go or what to do next. My wife, left behind in that room, her world shattered, was a reminder of the love we once had. A love I'd tossed away in a fit of rage and hurt. As I stepped into the dim light of the hallway, the reality of my solitude hit me. I was alone, truly alone, and it was all my own doing. When my brother's trial started, it was like opening a Pandora's box. The courtroom was packed, everyone eager to witness the downfall of a man who'd become the town's latest scandal. The prosecutor laid out his crimes: fraud, theft, a list that seemed to go on forever. I sat there, listening to the litany of his misdeeds, feeling a mix of disgust and pity. This was my flesh and blood, but he was a stranger to me. His life a series of bad choices that had finally caught up to him. As the trial unfolded, so did our private lives, splashed across the local news like some sordid soap opera. Our neighbors, friends, even strangers, they all had their opinions, their judgments. We were pariahs, outcasts in our own community. I could see the toll it was taking on my wife. She tried to hold her head high, but I saw the hurt in her eyes, the embarrassment. Then came the blow that knocked the wind out of her sails. My wife lost her job. The scandal was too much for her employer, and just like that, she was out of work. I watched as she struggled to cope with this new reality. The humiliation, the uncertainty. It was more than just a job. It was her identity, her independence, and it had been stripped away because of our collective mistakes. Laura, my sister-in-law, she couldn't handle it anymore. One day she just packed up and left. No goodbyes, no tearful farewells. Just a note saying she needed to start over. I understood, but it felt like another piece of my life slipping away. The woman carrying my child, gone, maybe for good. That's when I made my decision. I couldn't stay here in this town with all its memories and judging eyes. I needed a fresh start, away from the chaos I'd helped create. So I packed my bags, sold what little I had left, and left. Left my home, my wife, the life we'd built together. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done, but it was necessary. A clean break from a past that was suffocating me. My wife, she was left to deal with the aftermath alone. Financially and emotionally, she was in ruins. The house, our home, it was just another casualty of our shattered lives. She had to let it go, move somewhere smaller, cheaper. I heard about it from mutual friends, each update like a stab to my already guilty heart. Then out of the blue, an old friend visited her. Someone from happier times, someone who reminded her of who she used to be. I wasn't there, but I heard it gave her some comfort. A brief respite from the loneliness that had become her constant companion. The final straw was when she came to say goodbye. She stood on my doorstep, a shadow of the woman I'd married. We didn't say much. What was there to say? It was a farewell filled with regret, with what ifs and if onlys. I watched her drive away, knowing it was the last time I'd see her. Alone in my new place, I thought about her, about all of it. The love we'd shared, the life we'd built, and how I'd let my need for revenge destroy it all. I reflected on my choices, each one leading me further down a path I never intended to take. In the end, my wife was left to face a future that looked nothing like she'd planned. Alone, full of regrets, a life upended by mistakes, both hers and mine. We'd both reached the end of the line, but in very different ways. And as I sat there staring at the empty walls of my new life, I couldn't help but wonder, was it all worth it? The affair, the revenge, the pain we caused each other? The answer was as clear as it was painful. No, it wasn't worth it. When my wife and I got to know each other, she was the sweetest girl on earth. I had been crushing on her for a long time, and couldn't muster the courage to speak to her for a while. When I finally did, Ava and I flowed so well, and our conversations were heavenly. She was the kind of woman I wanted, but I was shy around women. My best friend Joseph knew how much I loved Ava, and I wouldn't stop talking about her whenever we were together. So he encouraged me to keep being the sweet guy I was, and in no time, Ava would be mine. He was actually correct. As I began to spend more time with Ava, go on dates or take her to the movies, our bond grew stronger. And when I finally asked her to be my girlfriend, she couldn't say no. When I met Ava, we worked in different companies and I was doing well financially. My only weakness was talking to women, but after Ava became mine, I didn't have to worry about that anymore. We dated for 2 years, and I made sure she was the happiest woman on earth within those 2 years. I did all these things because I genuinely loved her, and seeing her made me happy. Also, before I proposed to Ava, she always told me that she didn't want the kind of public proposal where I have to invite her friends or throw a party, so I took note of that, and I asked her to join me on vacation, and within our 4-day vacation I proposed to her and she said yes. Immediately after we returned home, we began to make our wedding plans. We had a church wedding and everything went blissfully. After our wedding, Joseph advised that we move into a bigger apartment, and being that he had been my childhood friend and best friend, I listened to him. Luckily for us, we could rent an apartment some house away from where he lived, so he just needed to walk for about 7 minutes before getting to my house, and this was just perfect for me. I didn't want a situation where I'd abandon my best friend because I was married, and when I discussed it with Ava, she agreed. After we moved into the new apartment, the bond between Joseph, Ava, and me grew stronger. He wasn't married yet, so this allowed him to stay out late at our place or spend time outside until we were all tired. Also, I loved that Ava was finally getting along with Joseph and not uptight with him like she used to be. About a year after our wedding, my company laid off a lot of staff, and fortunately for me, I found another job, and the pay was even better. The only downside about my new job was that it required me to travel to other towns a lot. And I didn't have enough time to spend with Ava and Joseph like I used to. But I always tried to make up for my absence whenever I was around. And because Ava could not drive, I was forced to look for someone to drive her to work. We searched for a couple of people online, but Ava was uncomfortable with any of them. And in the end, I suggested Joseph, my best friend, since I trusted him and Ava thought it was great too. Honestly, I chose Joseph because I believed he could look after Ava for me while I was not around, but little did I know I was making a terrible mistake. I knew Joseph had always been the flirty type and always had his way around women, but I didn't think he could disrespect me, break my trust, and destroy our 25 years of friendship. One day, I returned home on a Saturday, and I was so hungry that I had to stop at Joseph's house to eat before getting home. So I called him before entering our town, and he told me he was cooking. That was the main reason I dropped by his house first. I didn't want to go home yet because the last time I spoke to Ava, she told me she was shopping for groceries, so I calculated when she'd get home to cook, and going to Joseph's house was the best option. While we were eating, I noticed that he kept typing on his phone, and I believed it must have been some new girl he was trying to get laid with, so I didn't even bother asking him about it. So immediately, we were done eating, and Joseph tried to pack our plates while he still held onto his phone. His phone fell on the ground, and in my attempt to pick up his phone for him, I realized he had been chatting with Ava all along. She even sent him a half-naked picture of her in the bathroom, with a towel tied around her chest and her neatly waxed legs. I stared at the phone and I could not utter a word. I didn't need a psychic to tell me Joseph was sleeping with Ava. I was so broken, and I left his house immediately. Ava was trying to cook when I got home, and I confronted her about Joseph. At first, she denied it and even asked if I had hit my head. But when I told her that Joseph was HIV positive, she dropped the pan and turned in my direction. Ava asked me if I was messing with her, but I told her Joseph had been HIV positive for a very long time, and that's when she broke down and began to cry. She admitted she had been with Joseph without protection the previous night, but I already knew. I just wanted her to say it. I yelled at her for putting her health at risk, and for breaking my trust, then I kicked her out of the house. We eventually did an HIV test and we were both negative, but unfortunately for her, several weeks later she tested positive for herpes. At that time, I was already processing our divorce papers, and shortly after that, we divorced. I could not believe that despite everything I had done for Joseph and Ava, they still chose to hurt me like that. So I got a restraining order for them and warned them never to come near me or my house. In the end, Ava and Joseph didn't last one bit. Joseph only wanted to pleasure himself, but Ava thought she could fool me and keep it a secret. Finally, she begged me and said it was Joseph that misled her. But I wasn't buying any of that. Ultimately, I was forced to leave the apartment because it was toxic to my mental health. This happened long ago, but I'm thankful I'm gradually healing from the heartbreak. OP. I'm so sorry you had to go through all of this. It must have been tough to find out that the two people you trusted the most could do such a thing to you. I'm also glad you did the right thing by getting rid of both because they could harm you more. Thinking that she begged for your forgiveness after breaking your trust and hurting you that way is laughable. Now she knows that she cannot eat her cake and have it. I commend you for prioritizing yourself and your mental health and leaving the apartment. Knowing that you loved her so much might be difficult for you to move on, but I'm sure you will. Give yourself time and heal properly. I am proud you made the right decisions and thank you for sharing your story with us. Now let's move on to the second story of the day. My wife and I were high school lovers at one time. We were the cutest and hottest lovers in school back then, but because she got entangled with one of the popular boys I did not like, we were forced to break up. By entangled I mean I caught her kissing the boy. After high school I went to college the following year, and I never really saw her again until some years later. That night I went out with one of my friends who was having a bachelor's party and coincidentally Nancy was there. At first I didn't recognize her because it had been years, but when she walked to my table and introduced herself, everything I felt for her back in high school returned. She had completed college and was currently working in the same town as me, so that night we chose to iron out whatever issues we had in the past and we became friends again. I was hurt by what Nancy had done, but part of me still wanted her back. We exchanged contacts that night and we began to talk to each other more. Then from there we started going out and dating again. While going out together we got intimate, and that's when we both realized that we still had feelings for each other. I did my best to hold back because I didn't want her to take me for granted. But when she confessed that she still wanted me, we made it official and started dating again. We dated for almost a year and after that we got married. Most of our high school friends were surprised that we got back together, and they ensured they attended the wedding. The wedding was fun and the best part was seeing faces we had not seen in a long time. Nancy was pretty famous and she was a social media addict. She got paid to influence brands, use and talk about products and so much more, so aside from doing her day job she also made money online. Though she earned more money than I didn't have a problem with that, but I didn't allow that to stop me from doing my responsibilities as a husband. I provided for the house, got her whatever she wanted and even got her a car. We agreed that we wouldn't have children in the first 2 years of our marriage, because we wanted to make up for the lost time by spending more time with each other and doing the things we said we would do while we were teenagers. We believed we would get married and we did. I was a very supportive husband and most times Nancy gave me access to her Facebook page to help create content whenever she was busy since content creation was easy for me. I never complained about her always being on her phone because I knew it was one of her means of earning, and whenever she was busy I'd help around the house, cook, go grocery shopping, or if we were both tired of cooking I'd order takeouts or we'd eat out. So in my own way I did everything I could to make her enjoy our marriage, feel comfortable, and still have the freedom to do the things she used to do before we got married. While I struggled to balance my work life and marriage life to make Nancy happy, I never knew that my wife was having an affair with another influencer she met on Facebook until something happened. The funny thing was she had mentioned the guy a couple of times and the crazy number of followers he had, but I just thought she was stalking her fellow influencers. One day I was at home taking my day off when I got a call from a truck company that they were towing my car. As confused as I was, I asked for the location, and I went down there only to realize that it was my wife's car, but the company called me because the car was registered under my name. I was shocked to see my wife's car there because her office was only a 30-minute drive from the house, but that location was an hour away from home. I didn't get it because she was supposed to be at work at that time, and I looked around for the sign of a women's store or nail salon, but I didn't see any, and she didn't also mention anything about going for shopping before leaving the house that morning. Then while trying to talk to the truck company guys, I saw my wife coming from one corner with her hands wrapped around the influencer guy's waist. The moment she saw me she gasped and was surprised to see her car being towed away. I was really heartbroken because from the body language I saw it was evident that the two of them had been intimate with each other. Without waiting for an explanation, I began to video the both of them, but the guy kept saying, "Sir, this means nothing, we were just having fun and she's all yours," and he was embarrassed by the number of people that began to turn heads. Finally, out of anger and disappointment, I yelled at them and asked Nancy if she had fun with other men to become their influencer, but she said nothing and began to cry. When her car was successfully towed away, I went into my car and drove off without her. I saw her fighting with the guy from the rearview mirror, but I already knew it was over between us. I got home and posted the video on her Facebook page because I had access to it, and I tagged the other influencer guy. I knew the post would be taken down, but before it was, many people had seen it and commented on it. She tried to beg me when she came home, but she met her stuff scattered by the door. I asked her to pack her things and leave, and she did. She obviously had something for famous guys so she could go on and live the life she wanted. We divorced shortly after that. I blamed myself for being so stupid. I ignored the red flag and believed she must have changed, but Nancy would always be Nancy. The news of our divorce affected her influencing business, and most of her clients closed their contracts with her. And the influencer cut her off for ruining his career, but she deserved everything she got. I've moved on now, and I'll be careful enough not to ignore red flags again in the future. OP, you were such a good husband, yet your ex-wife did not appreciate your efforts to make life comfortable for her. Not all men are like you, but she took what she had for granted. I'm happy you did not let her back into your life. She would have kept hurting you. It's almost unbelievable that she cheated on you in less than 1 year of marriage. I agree with you that she deserved everything that happened to her, and you've successfully gotten rid of a toxic spouse. I'm also sure you will not ignore red flags in the future again. I wish you all the best. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened.